Welcome to Daily Dose of Knowledge, and today we are going to talk about what happens when ordinary people are handed power over other people. The answer is one of the darkest findings in the history of science. In 1971, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo wanted to understand prison violence. He wanted to know whether prisons were brutal because they attracted brutal people, or because the environment itself made people brutal. He converted the basement of Stanford University's psychology building into a mock prison. He recruited 24 healthy, psychologically stable male college students. He flipped a coin to decide who would be guards and who would be prisoners. Random assignment. No selection for personality. No training for cruelty. Just a coin. The prisoners were arrested at their homes without warning. Real police cars, real handcuffs, real booking procedures. They were stripped, deloused, given prison uniforms and numbers. Their names were removed. They were numbers now. The guards were given uniforms, mirrored sunglasses, and wooden batons. They were told only one thing: maintain order. Zimbardo expected the experiment to last 2 weeks. It lasted 6 days. On the first day, the prisoners rebelled. They barricaded themselves in their cells and tore off their prisoner numbers. The guards reacted with fire extinguishers, stripped the prisoners naked, removed their beds, and placed the ringleaders in solitary confinement. The rebellion was crushed within hours. By the second day, the guards had divided the prisoners into good and bad cells. Good prisoners received privileges. Bad prisoners received punishment. The prisoners had no way of knowing the division was arbitrary. They began competing for favor, informing on each other, turning against each other to improve their own conditions. By the third day, the guards were waking prisoners at 2 a.m. for arbitrary counts, forcing humiliating exercises, controlling bathroom access, making prisoners clean toilets with their bare hands. None of this was instructed. None of this was planned. The guards invented it themselves. One guard later described entering the role so completely that he forgot he was a student. He was a guard. He thought like a guard. He acted like a guard. The prisoners deteriorated rapidly. One prisoner began screaming uncontrollably and had to be released on the second day. 3 more followed within days. One developed a full psychosomatic rash across his entire body when his parole request was denied. By day 5, the prisoners had internalized their helplessness so completely that when Zimbardo offered them the chance to be released in exchange for forfeiting their payment, most of them said they would rather stay. They had forgotten they could leave. They had forgotten they were students. They had become prisoners. Zimbardo himself had become so absorbed in the role of prison superintendent that it took his girlfriend visiting the experiment to finally make him see what was happening. She looked at what he had built and told him it was wrong. He shut it down the next day. Now, let us talk about what this tells us about human nature. The first thing it tells us is that roles are more powerful than character. The guards were not selected for cruelty. They were assigned to a role that permitted cruelty, and the role consumed them. This is what psychologists call the situationist perspective. Behavior is determined less by who you are and more by the situation you are placed in. The uniform gave permission. The mirrored glasses removed accountability. The institutional structure provided justification. Character was not enough to resist it. The second thing it tells us is that power corrupts not through intention, but through environment. The guards did not arrive wanting to abuse anyone. The environment rewarded control. It punished disorder. It removed consequences for cruelty. And slowly, without noticing, they became the role. The third thing it tells us is that helplessness is self-reinforcing. The prisoners who gave up fastest were not the weakest. They were the ones who understood the system had total control. And when that understanding settled in, resistance became unthinkable. This is the psychology of every oppressive system ever built. Remove the belief that change is possible, and the oppressed will enforce their own oppression. The fourth thing it tells us is about the banality of oversight. Zimbardo was the superintendent. He watched everything deteriorate. He watched prisoners break down. He watched guards become cruel. And he did not stop it, because he too had been consumed by the situation. The person in charge of preventing the harm had become part of the system producing it. Now let us talk about what this means outside the laboratory. Every workplace has a power gradient. Every institution has a hierarchy. Every system has roles that grant authority and roles that receive it. The Stanford Experiment did not happen in a unique environment. It happened in a recognizable one. The manager, who becomes a different person once promoted, the official who begins to believe the rules do not apply to them, the person who enforces policy they privately despise because the role demands it. These are not aberrations, they are the Stanford basement. The most important thing Zimbardo discovered was not that power corrupts, it was that power corrupts invisibly. The guards did not notice themselves changing. The prisoners did not notice themselves surrendering, and Zimbardo did not notice himself becoming complicit. The corruption happened without anyone deciding to be corrupted. That is what makes it dangerous. That is what makes it universal. You cannot defend against a change you cannot see happening, except by knowing in advance that it will come, and deciding before you are in the room what kind of person you intend to be when the role tries to make that decision for you. Subscribe to Daily Dose of Knowledge and drop a comment with whether you think you would have been a guard or a prisoner.